Duck Bacon says, when drawing, do you always go through a set systematic list, or do you scribble all the way through, or both? This is a really great question, Duck Bacon. For me, I do follow a set process. Starting out with the foundations, going through the different steps that I execute in order to get a solid foundation down, usually for a character. If it's for a scene, I sketch it out. I sketch out a very basic rough of the general composition that I want for the scene, and then I simply go over the top of it. Scenes are really no problem. They don't require a whole lot of thinking because they can be wrong, they can be off, unless they're an interior environment where perspective is involved, in which case a little bit more planning does need to go into it. But if it's an organic landscape, then you can sort of do whatever you want. There's lots of weird looking landscapes out there that you could certainly, go hog wild with if you wanted to. But here's the thing. What matters with any image that you're creating is the composition. So let's say, for example, that you're drawing a desert. Well, where you place the cliffs within that scene, where you put the canyon, where you've situated the camera, that matters. You will always want to focus for your scene. Okay, what is the viewer supposed to be looking at? And then when you decide to divide that scene up, and this goes for panels too, into thirds, make sure that the point of focus you want people to hone in on when they look at your art is put on one of those thirds. That's the basic 101s of setting up a scene, setting up a shot. But yes, with characters, I follow a formula for the foundations. Usually that involves focusing purely on the pose and the proportions and the anatomy in the beginning. So I'm thinking about, okay, I'm drawing a particular character. Let's say it's one of my original characters, Borok, and I know how Borok moves. I know how he holds himself. So I'm thinking about the poses that I would give a character like Borok in the particular piece I've decided to work on. Now, do I have an idea in my head already? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm just seeing what happens on the page, seeing what I can come up with. But nonetheless, I'm still focused on thinking about the kind of pose that I'd like the character to have. And that determines, of course, the mannequin model and how that's going to be situated on the page. I construct it bit by bit, usually starting with the head, working my way down the body, adding in the chest, vest, as I like to call it, or the simplified rib cage. Then I'll join that down to the pelvis, add in the legs, thinking about the entire movement of the body as I do this, by the way. So I'm following a certain line of movement trajectory, gesture, if you will, as I extend the center line of the chest down into the pelvis. I'm thinking about how is the torso moving as I place the pelvis under the chest over here, and is it twisting, right? And then I'm thinking about the pose as a whole, though, like where the arms will be and where the legs are going to be positioned. And I'm trying to figure out, whether or not he's just going to be an idle pose, whether he's going to be in an action pose. Super important during that foundational stage. Of course, proportions at this point sort of second nature for me, so I don't have to think about those much. Really, what I'm judging is the overall composition of the character. Again, so this is still about composition. I might be constructing the character a little bit differently, using a different method to how I would construct the landscape, but I am thinking about the positioning of everything and how it looks overall. So I'm constantly aware with my peripherals of where the arms are, where the legs are, and how the body is shaped as it maneuvers into the pose I want it to be in. Next up, once that foundation is down, I move on to the design of the character. Well, actually, I lay the anatomy in on top, then I get the design in there. So I build the character up in layers. And then finally, once I've gotten the sketch down, because that's everything that goes into the sketch, then it's simple. I don't even have to think about it. I just go in over the top with a more refined line and polish up the line work. Add in the shadows if need be, place down the rendering, bada boom, bada bing, you end up with a finished line drawing after that. But yes, I follow that formula every time.